Hello, everyone, and welcome to our LinkedIn Live brought to you by GoFreight, the #1 all-in cloud software for global freight forwarders and NVOCCs. My name is Sarah Barnes-Humphrey. I'm the founder and host of Let's Talk Supply Chain, the Blended Podcast, and the Blended Pledge, and I will be your host for this discussion today. And today I'm joined by Trenton Chen from GoFreight. So welcome. Rick from GoFreight joined us on Let's Talk Supply Chain back in July for a really interesting episode of the show. We talked about visibility, the impact of fines on margins, and the importance of a customer-centric approach. And it was just great. So if anybody missed that episode, go head over to letstalksupplychain.com or our YouTube channel to check that out. So Trenton, let's start with you. Will you introduce yourself for us and give us an overview of what you're doing at GoFreight?
Sure, thanks, Sarah. I'm excited to be here. GoFreight is a software for freight forwarders. They use our software to run every aspect of their business. It helps the salespeople on the road or with the customers. It helps the employees in the offices manage all the shipments from bookings all the way to invoicing and payments. It helps the owner or the management team to run their business in high level. When we have the critical information for the internal teams, GoFreight also uses that to transform their customer experiences by providing a shipper-facing platform or by providing the real-time notification for exceptions or alerts for potential demurrage and detention, or by providing customizable weekly shipment reports.
Amazing. And you're the co-founder and CEO, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so welcome. And I know from my background in logistics how important technology is to the day-to-day lives of those on the front line in logistics. I remember having piles and piles of files and so much paper on my desk. I mean, I could have used a software like this when I was in freight forwarding. And of course, we're joined by two more fantastic industry professionals. So a warm welcome to Kanav and Daniel. Thank you so much for joining us today. Can you also share who you are and what you do? So I'm going to start with you, Kanav.
Hey guys, first off, thank you for having me on this podcast. So my name is Kanav. I work for Transmodal Group, which is a family-owned and run freight forwarding business. We started off doing freight forwarding, but we're slowly expanding into different aspects of logistics overall. And yeah, we've been in business since 2005. My father started it, and then now I'm the second generation coming in. So lots of pressure, lots of work to be done, but we'll make sure that we get through it.
Well, and I know that, and you're a native Canadian, which I'm super excited about. And I come from a family business in freight forwarding as well. So you and I have a lot to talk about offline. So I'm excited for you to be here. Now, Daniel, over to you. Tell us who you are and what you do.
Well, I started in the logistics business back in the early days of containerization. Actually, when Sealand was getting started and going, I don't feel like aging myself, but I will. I started in their management training program in Seattle, and then moved down to Oakland, California, and then back up to Syracuse. Believe it or not, Sealand at that time had a domestic division, so I learned about domestic freight first before I learned about international freight. Then went to work for a container leasing company, and then from there back into the ocean carrier business. I worked for APL for a number of years. First in New York, I ran the Northeast, and then out to Singapore for about 4 great years, and then back to their corporate headquarters. I then left APL, which was a great company, I think still is, and co-founded 2 companies along the way. One in reverse logistics.
Mm-hmm.
Actually got to spend some time in Mississauga and in Oakville,
Nice.
with Ford on the plastic containers, getting them back to their origin. I left that and thought, gee whiz, security is a big thing, and so I
Mm-hmm.
worked back in the container leasing industry on the cargo security, being the early stages of AMS and ISF, and electronically figuring out how to get this data and information, which underscored the need for faster transition of the logistics industry to being more focused on electrons than paper on your desk, Sarah.
Yeah.
And, and so I did that for a while. I went to work for Wistek Global for a number of years.
Okay.
Worked ran their pricing piece. And when I say pricing, carrier rates management and things like that, which is a
Mm-hmm.
very critical thing in our industry, as you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then also on the corporate development team when we were doing those acquisitions, led a lot of the team doing that.
Hmm.
So I've been working since I was 12. So my wonderful wife said, you should do something different and spend more time at home. So I moved into semi-retirement and couldn't stop working in this great industry because
Mm-hmm.
it's developing rapidly and quickly and changing more rapidly than in the last 5 years than it had over
Mm-hmm.
the last 20, and then certainly prior to that to the Phoenicians putting cargo on and off ships.
Well, and it
So
takes a hold of you, right?
it does. It does. So
Mm-hmm.
so it's been wonderful. So Sarah, thanks for having us. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Excited to hear your story as well. I remember Sealand, so you're not dating yourself too much. So I can't wait for the insights that I know all of you have to share. So today we're going to be talking about digital transformation in freight forwarding, particularly when it comes to small and medium-sized businesses. 2023 has seen some of the biggest challenges for the freight forwarding industry. While the extremes of the pandemic have faded, the industry is still seeing the ripple effects of normalization in consumer behavior and capacity issues. And this has been compounded by a slowing economy and geopolitical disruption. And digital transformation, whilst it's been a hot topic, hasn't completely come to fruition. However, numbers show that volumes have strengthened throughout the year and that the market could see a strong peak season, as well as a drastically improved outlook for 2024. And right at the heart of this all are the SMBs, right? The small to medium sized businesses. So let's set the scene for our discussion today and talk about the current state of freight forwarding for those SMBs. Daniel, I've been reading that as pressure on margins increases, SMBs will be squeezed the tightest. What do you think? Is that the case? And why is that the case?
Sarah, it all depends on the path that they take. They could choose to follow the rates down that rabbit hole, or they could change their behaviors and their attitudes and how they approach the business.
Mm-hmm.
As you know, the pre-pandemic or during the pandemic, inventories were just in case instead of just in time, and that's now changing. As you know, the capacity changed. Ocean carriers built these extra large ships
Mm-hmm.
and added them into the whole supply chain. But I think that the change is actually good because, as you said, Sarah, consumer behaviors have changed dramatically as well. And so now that they've returned to regular normality, BCOs will be starting to reduce the number of freight forwarders that they use.
Mm-hmm.
During the pandemic, they were using 5 to be sure that they had space, or 6 to be sure that they
Right.
had space. They weren't bogged down by some of the congestion at the ports, or faced rolls on their ship, and so they've always wanted to be sure that something was in the pipeline. Well, that's kind of stopped. That just in case, and now it's settling back into a more of a just in time, and the time has shortened. Inventories have, as you've seen, reduced in many cases. They've moved from sitting in a warehouse for a long time to sitting in a warehouse for a very short period of time. And so I think the SMBs have to focus on what they do really, really well, and I think, and manage their margins very carefully and not follow the rates down that rabbit hole. And I think that what SMBs bring to the table is people matter,
Yeah.
and the people in their organizations really do care about their customers in a very dramatic way. Not that the DSLs and the the DSVs and the DHLs, et cetera, don't care about their customers. But I bet you Canav wakes up every single morning and knows every one of his customers.
Mhm.
And that's a lot different. And they bring a whole different set of values.
Yeah.
But I think that they have to be thinking about giving up on profitable shipments.
Mhm.
Choosing their customers a little bit more carefully,
Yeah. Well,
instead of chasing market share.
yeah, and relationships matter. I mean, when we talk
Yeah, they
about
do.
this industry, we haven't always focused on customer experience, and I think
Right.
that's changing. I think, they're also looking at reduced SKU counts, right? Like reducing the SKUs, like how much product are we actually going to hold in inventory? And you're right. During the pandemic, one of my friends who's a shipper said she was working with 14 freight forwarders. And
Wow.
it was because she needed that capacity. She needed to know that her product was going to move because, you've got clients like Nordstrom that are going to find you.
Yep.
Kanab, did you want to jump in here real quick? Because I saw you nodding your head to what Daniel was saying.
He hit it spot on. I don't think relationships simply just matter. I think this entire industry is built only on relationships, and that's the
Right.
only way you can get ahead in this industry. For example, when COVID hit, everybody was scrambling to get some type of space on any carrier. As a result, a lot of the clients that have huge volumes, they had to diversify their risk and work with a bunch of different forwarders to make sure they can
Mhm.
get their space to move their goods. And as a result, if that opportunity was provided to you, if you played your cards right, it would have been the best couple of years for your
Mhm.
business, which ended up being that way for us because even though we had people coming in showing interest in shipping with us, we also knew that at the same time we can't take unreasonable advantage of the situation. We have to look out for the customer's bottom line. And as he said, customer centric work is what moves you forward. So I
Yeah.
very much agree with what Daniel said.
Well, and partnering, right? Not just price. I remember, when I was in logistics, a lot of it came down to price. And we really learned our lesson during the pandemic because you need a partner, right? There were some freight forwarders that didn't take additional business because they didn't have the capacity. And if you weren't partnering with them, right, it's a
Yeah.
completely different story. So, Daniel, I'm going to go back to you. I'm also reading that the freight forwarding market is expanding and that the market expansion is fueled largely by those small to medium-sized freight forwarders. Talk to us about that. Is the landscape changing? Do we have a lot more players coming in? I mean, I kind of feel like that's been the freight forwarding industry for the last couple of years, right?
Sarah, I think you're spot on. I think that the larger freight forwarders continue to get larger. It's interesting, and with the cash that they had, they're also consolidating some with other larger freight forwarders. So there's space in the marketplace for the SMBs,
Mm-hmm.
like Canav's company, that really do pay attention and build those relationships with their customers. Sarah, I think I read recently that the freight forwarders are now over 50% of the entire market.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a big change. I think that's the first time that it's crossed that threshold. I mean, I can remember when it was, a mere 10% of
Mm-hmm.
the entire market, maybe even less. So it's changing, and mostly because the demands are changing, Sarah. I mean, think about, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, you didn't sit at your computer and have something show up on your doorstep this afternoon. That's that's changed. That's changed dramatically, and I think those are the changes that enable the SMBs to really perform very, very well in the marketplace.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Interestingly enough, also I think the carriers are recognizing the value of freight forwarding.
Right.
I can remember when I was at APL, we had ACS, which was American Consolidated Service, which then changed into APL Logistics, and I always thought that they had the best relationships with their customers. It
Mm.
was kind of like that old adage: you marry your freight forwarder consolidator, and you date your carrier.
Kind of
Um,
true.
yeah, kind of true. And so I think that's also become more evident in the marketplace because customers demand that extra service.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, shoot, I read that the Port of Singapore is even in the game. They bought BDP in Philadelphia
Mm-hmm.
some time ago, which had been in the freight forwarding business, since Columbus. And
Yeah.
so I think that I think that the market is changing, and I think the demand is changing, and I think the SMBs are filling that gap and
Hmm.
providing that value-added service, and they will stick. You know, they're bringing that stickiness to the table, which hadn't so much existed in the past.
Yeah.
And even carriers are starting to buy into freight forwarders. You know, they're sucking up some of the larger ones. So I think it's a it's a testament to how the market is changing. And plus, some of the carriers aren't really interested in performing anything other than a port to port service,
Hmm.
and
Well, and
they're not
also,
meeting the market demand. Sorry, Sarah, go ahead.
no, all good. And also, it drives competition, but the
Sure.
competition is looked at very differently now than it was before. Because again, it was very price driven. Now it's, those BCOs, the customers are really looking for that partnership, that relationship. How do we grow together? What's the data that we can exchange? I mean, Daniel, you and I back in our day, there was no real data to be had other than what we
No.
were doing from a manual perspective. And now there's so much more. It's so much more fulfilling. So let's talk about some of the key challenges that are there for SMBs right now. So from your perspective, Trenton, what are some of those key challenges? Because they're often facing, unique challenges compared to some of those large enterprises. I'm going to start with Trenton and go to Kanav.
Of course. So I think now shippers are looking for anything besides price. So if you can provide value-added services, or you have this capability of offering those kind of tailor-made or customizable
Mm,
services, and that created stickiness. But for some of those small, medium-sized freight forwarders, they probably didn't do that before, or they just get started. And for to scale those value-added service, we really need technology or software involved.
mhm.
So they kind of facing the competition from the larger freight forwarders who might integrate their software with the ERP system of the shippers already. So how could you change that value added um, services that can really apply to the current situation?
Yeah, and how do you sort of level that playing field? I think that's probably one of the key challenges, right, Kanav? Talk to us about some of the key challenges that you're seeing from a small to medium size, freight forwarder.
It's exactly what Trenton was touching on. It's scalability, because if you're doing all your work manually, how do you expand? You just have to keep hiring more and more people.
Yeah.
But if you have technology on your side, all of a sudden, for minimal effort, you have a lot more output, which is exactly what you need. And that directly affects your bottom line as well.
Hmm.
So I think technology is the great equalizer.
Okay.
Prior to a software like GoFreight, only the big guys had their own custom built softwares. But with something like GoFreight, now I have the same value add that somebody else could have, but with that additional personalized service that small to medium sized businesses have. So I think that's a good recipe to win more clients and sustain them as well.
Well, yeah, and we had our proprietary software when we were in, but that's very cumbersome. Like you need to have a team of IT professionals to be able to
Yeah.
maintain it, update it, keep it with the times, and with everything changing so quickly, technology and having the right technology partner, working with that technology partner is really going to be key to not only business success for you, but also supply chain success for your client, right? Is how do we think about you as a client, but also your clients as well? So Trenton, what are some of the opportunities for small to medium sized businesses? And then I'll go over to you, Kanav.
I think the opportunities for small and medium-sized freight forwarders is definitely that how can you adapt to a software, and sometimes you need to adjust your workflow based on the software you're using or based on the customer needs.
Yeah.
And ultimate goal is to ensure that your customers will be success. Under the current microeconomy situation, I think the shippers are mostly struggling. So
Hmm.
that's how you can really provide to stretch your hands and really make them successful so that they will stay with your services. I think that's the key for small, medium-sized freight forwarders.
That is so true. How do we keep the customers? Because Kanav, you and I both know that they are going to a few different freight forwarders to really look at service, but also price and things like that. So how do we keep bringing them back? I mean, that's a huge opportunity for small to medium sized businesses. And again, technology can help with that. But I think also, Kanav, you can probably agree with this, is that you got to figure out what it is that you want to change, right? What are the processes that you want to automate? What is it that's going to not only benefit you as a freight forwarder, but also is going to make it easier for your clients to work with you? So what are some of the opportunities that you're seeing as well?
There's quite a few actually. One of the main issues is customers don't even know certain solutions exist. Sorry, one
That is
second.
very, very, very true. Yep.
They don't even know certain solutions exist. So once they do find out about it, it's almost like DOC. We're going with you 100%.
Uh-huh.
And when you look at it at a level deeper than that, you realize most other forwarders who aren't utilizing the changing environment with technology, especially in freight forwarding, they're all just still competing on price. And in terms of competing on service, they won't even get to that point because in order to test that, you have to take that leap of faith and give them that first shipment in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
So if they're all competing on price and then we come in, hey, this is our rate, fairly competitive, but then we can also get you a tracking portal and automated shipment reports to keep an eye on all your shipments. They're like, that's like, without a doubt, that's the choice that we want to go with. So that's a huge opportunity. The other opportunity is more on the internal side about, again, you're going to hear these words come out of my mouth a lot. It's operational efficiency. You need to have systems in place for any and every function of your company, because you can't improve anything unless you can measure it. And when you measure it, all of a sudden you have the levers you need to make any tangible changes and see that cause and effect relationship. So the moral of the story is you need data.
Mm-hmm.
Make data-driven decisions, and you should be able to solve almost any problem in your company.
Well, and I think that's true both for your internal operations, but also what that looks like externally to your customer and what it means for your customer as well, right? I think
Yes.
it's sort of a double-edged sword there. So as we talk about the challenges, the opportunities, the growth, and ultimately the future of the industry, it's clear, technology is key. If you're not using technology, you're going to be left behind. And with the ever evolving challenges, technology has become that game changer. It's become that competitive advantage. So what does the landscape of digital transformation within the freight forwarding industry look like right now? Daniel, I'm going to start with you, and then we'll go to Kanav and Trent.
There are some very smart people building some very smart applications, and yet they're not stuck together. And so the data and the information is coming from various sources.
Mm-hmm.
So I think integrating the data from multiple sources is going to be one of the keys for success going forward, because there are some really good pieces of software out there that focused on one problem to solve. But the logistics supply chain is not one problem to solve. It's many problems to solve
It is, yeah.
along the way. And so I think that finding that the key is using the richness of that data that's disintegrated, and then integrating it back into a solution that's going to be seamless for the customers, for the SMBs to start using. The other thing, and I think Kanav hit on it, is focus on what they do really well.
Mm-hmm.
And then build that level of stickiness with their customers that'll be hard to unstick with
Mm-hmm.
lower rates and less value. And I think using software today is going to make that big difference. Efficient software that's going to pull the various parts of the supply chain together, from the ERP of the BCO, the beneficial cargo owner, right straight through to deliver to the customer's front door. There's an enormous amount of data that flows through that system, and it's finding and different parts along the ways. It's kind of integrating that disintegrated platform or data to make it make sense for their customers. And then I think the opportunities are really understanding their customers better, truly understanding what they need, and then focusing on that going forward.
Well, and not only the customers, but the customers. I think
That's
about
that's what I meant. Both
yeah.
levels. Both
Yeah, yeah,
levels.
yeah. And so, Kanav, over to you. Daniel made a really good point about integration. How do you think about integration? Because obviously, I would assume that you're working with a few different technologies for a few different reasons, right? Because freight forwarding can be warehousing, it can be freight forwarding, like it can be logistics. So, talk to us about what you think about or how you're thinking about integration. And yeah, talk to us about that.
My take on integrations is the more, the better,
Yeah.
because then you streamline the relay of data. For example, we have GoFreight we use as a place to store our shipment related data and also generate documents and also manage our accounting. But in terms of the flow of the work
Mhm.
coming to your desk every single day, checking each shipment that needs to be checked, whatever updates need to be made and relayed to customers, we use a different platform called Monday.com. So
Mhm.
I know GoFreight's working on their API. So once that is ready, I'll be connecting both platforms so that
Awesome.
whatever changes we make in either or, they're automatically reflected on the other. So again, goes down to operational efficiency. Each each one step you have to do that's less of, the more energy and output you can give towards things that really move the business forward.
Yeah.
So things like sales, making sure your customers are happy, getting feedback from them, and just iterating on that process again and again. So yeah, technology, I feel like is if you don't harness this power properly, you're gonna get left behind. You
Well,
need
and
to you need to do that.
yeah, and I think you made a good point, right? Is that you also need to be working with a technology provider that can help with your growth, right? Help you scale as well. Like you're
Yeah.
talking about, you're working with a couple of different systems, where you're working on an API to integrate the two. And GoFreight is that partner for you that they're working on that solution to help you scale and grow. And I think that that's really, really important. Trenton, do you have anything to add as far as the landscape of digital transformation and what it looks like right now?
Because I'm kind of new to this industry,
Mhm.
although it's almost 10 years. But compared to other industries, probably I think it's still a very early stage, to
Yeah.
be honest, because there are so many freight forwarders out there. There are close to 100K freight forwarders in the United States alone. So I would say that 80% of them are still in very, very, very early stage.
Yeah.
But it's moving right now in the past 3 to 5 years. It's
Mhm.
moving 10 times, 20 times faster than before. That's a very
Mhm.
good sign. And because the demands or the requirements from their customer side have dramatically increased. Um, so that's something I would like to see because I still believe that the freight forwarder could be 10 times more efficient than they are doing right now.
Mhm.
But it's a mixed effort, not just technology, but the mindset of the owners. Also, the competition as well for with those digital native freight forwarders coming in, from the rising of the customer expectation driven from the consumer side. So I think those are the important factors that we can see the faster speed of this digital transformation in the future.
Yeah, less resistance, right? Less resistance, more open-mindedness to really help drive their businesses forward. So, what is the role that technology is playing in the industry as a whole? Now, Trenton, you just said that we've got some ground to make up, right? We're a little bit further behind some of the other industries that you've taken a look at. So, talk to us a little bit about that.
I would say that I think this as long as I'm here, I think we really need practical solution that can see the return of investment right after the deployment.
Such an
So
important point.
we've seen
Yeah.
so many new technology being advertised in this industry,
Hmm.
but I don't see much more efficient in reality. I think that's what GoFreight is working on very hard. is that to provide a practical solution that can really deliver value for our customers or their customers.
Right.
I think it's so important. So we need to spend a lot of time understand the entire industry, understand the supply chain, understand the upstream and downstream and the value chain, so that we can really help our customers solve their daily problems.
Yeah, it can make it easy, right? Make it simple. And I think you bring up a really good point around ROI. ROI means different things to different people. A lot of times when we hear the words ROI, we're thinking like you're saving money, but that's not the only thing that we're saving, right? Because we need to save time. And so, Kanav, talk to us about, how technology, what's the ROI of, using that technology or maybe partnering with GoFreight? What does that look like? And has it been an easy journey for you? Because I'm sure when you're thinking about your business and you're thinking about the people within your business, it's got to be easy to implement, right? And then the ROI, how do you think about that ROI? Because again, everybody thinks about it differently. And I think it comes down to, what is it that we're solving for? And what does that successful implementation, successful technology look like for us? It's not necessarily just the money, it's the time, the operational efficiency, right?
Yes, I agree. ROI can mean, like you said, a lot of different things to different people. The way I look at it is, if it saves you one of these three things, it's a good investment. It's either time, money, or energy, because
Mm,
energy also does play a role in how much you can output. So if it saves you any of those three variables, or maybe all three, it's a worthwhile investment. And as far as GoFreight goes, when we signed up with GoFreight, we were a team of 4 or 5 people just about a year and a half ago. Now we're a team of 25 people. And
wow.
through that process, they've been right there next to us, assisting us in any and every way possible. So it's been a worthwhile investment, if I could say that.
Yeah. So talk to us about the importance of a TMS, a transport management system, for you in that growth. I mean, congratulations, because that's quite a bit of growth in a very, very short time.
Thank you very much. TMS systems, they're the backbone of our operations, because that's where our shipments live. That's their home. Any information we need, that's where we go and get it. And that's where we wrangle all the data and make sure everything is clean. The P&L for the shipment makes sense. We're not billing the customer anything we're not supposed to, and vice versa. So all those things, I think, come together and make for a very smooth, easy to use system. And like you said earlier, it has to be intuitive. So we switched from a platform called Viva Freight. Um, just to put it into perspective, we bought the license for it in 2004, back when the idea of a recurring fee for a software was unheard of.
Right.
So we switched from that to GoFreight. World of a difference in terms of capabilities, but it was actually very, very intuitive and easy to follow. So my team was able to be up and running in a matter of a week, and they were proficient with the system as well. So
Amazing.
it helps a lot.
Well, and I think about you bringing on new people to the team, and that many new people. I mean, you're talking about 20 new people, I think, within a year or so. And so it's got to be easy to be able to onboard them and train them on that system. And since you've been able to do it that quickly, I can only assume that it's because of the ease and simplicity of, working with a technology platform like GoFreight.
100%. The way it's been architectured, it alleviates almost any and every problem that other softwares don't really think of.
Interesting. So, Daniel, as a consultant in the industry, you're talking to a lot of different people. You're talking to a lot of carriers and freight forwarders. How important has the adoption of technology? Are you still seeing resistance? I mean, it kind of seems like a silly question at the moment, because hopefully not. But how are people thinking about technology? How are they thinking about TMSs?
Sarah, the ones that are going to survive are the ones that figure out that it's critical to their success
Mhm.
and survival. I was thinking not too long ago. I was talking to person that I was helping out and doing some work with, and they told me about their process of how they manage their rates from their agents. And I asked the question, well, why do you do it that way? And it was, well, it's because that's the way that we've done it.
I
And
hate
and
that. I hate that answer.
and I've kept myself from picking up a pencil and poking my eye out at that point in time. But it's
Don't do
just
that.
no, don't do that. And so the issue is that you have to ask those questions
Mhm.
repeatedly and ask the hard questions repeatedly. Why are we doing it this way? What can we improve? What are the processes we can do? And unless you're willing to do that, and on top of adding that layer of technology, you're not going to be successful.
Mhm.
So it's absolutely critical for their survival going forward.
Mhm.
They're not going to succeed with files on their desk, Sarah, like you once upon a time had.
My
Um,
mountains of files,
your
like
mountains
literally,
of
I
files.
think I was at my desk once and I had so many files piled, you couldn't see me.
Yeah, and and that's when they say, "Well, is Sarah gone home for the evening?" And people say, "We don't know." Um, and, and
That was true too. That happened a couple times.
and so the problem is if they don't adopt it and they sit back and they say that they're going to do it the way that they did it in the past, survival is going to be hard. And what they're going to do is, in order to keep their market share, they're going to chase their rates downward,
Mhm.
reduce their margins, not understand what their margins are, and they will soon be out of business.
Mhm.
And I think there's been a lot of freight forwarders that beamed with success during the pandemic and are now facing the hard realities of really trying to manage their business well,
Yeah.
and without a TMS. And they're going to resist because they're, as Kanav said, back in the day, it was unheard of that you actually paid monthly for software.
Mhm.
Well, that's gone away. And I think that the value then comes into the changes that you need, the changing landscape, how fast you can adopt, um, and how fast some of these integrations and the use of this data, because the customers are going to demand it.
Well, and I think you make another good point, right? They may be using a TMS, but does that TMS change as quickly as A, your business, and B, what the customers are demanding? I think those are also some of the key questions that when you're looking to work with a technology partner that you need to be asking them. Right? How are you innovative? How are you innovating? How are you keeping on top of the changes in the industry, consumer behavior, what our clients need, that kind of thing. So you bring up some really good points with a lot of those great questions. So Trenton, let's talk about GoFreight. I know we've mentioned it a few times during this discussion, but what exactly is GoFreight? You also talked about some customized solutions, and I'd be interested to hear a little bit more about those as well.
Okay, so before I jump into this complex industry, actually, I was really surprised how complex a freight forwarding workflow is.
Yes.
And that was the reason why I decided to fund GoFreight, but that's another story I'll probably share with you later or next
Okay.
Sunday, some other day. But I see that there are three critical problems in this industry a modern TMS could and should solve. Number one is that I think this is a people powered and people constrained business
Mm-hmm.
because so many of process involved and it's a complex workflow. So that, for example, you want to double your revenue or double your volume as a freight forwarder, maybe you have to double your number of employees to make that happen, to maintain the same level of services you provide, and to maintain the same value you provide to your customers. But if you want to really have a modern TMS, you can really um, help the forwarders grow the business without increasing manpower. For example, you can bring all those same automation features, or we can use the critical data like visibility to boost internal efficiency, to minimize the human errors, to minimize the usage of email phone calls in the future.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And so that when you try to five times the revenue, for example, you need only probably double your team size. I think
Mm-hmm.
that's the first problem I've observed. So we try to really solve that problems at scale. And the number two is that technology options are antiquated here in this in this industry. So I do think that intuitive and easy to use is really important for a modern modern TMS. Is because just like Kanav said, when you onboarding your new employees, the time is so valuable to you. So if you can onboard them within a week, it's so different than you can onboard them with 2 months and find out that, oh, it's not the right fit for you, for example.
Yeah.
And then the second one is that the plug and play with all other systems capability, right? So the integration capability or connectivity. So that's lack of, instead of you have to hire a consulting services for firm just to help you to integrate with one system, and that firm happen not to know anything about your industry, so you have to teach them from scratch, and you have to teach them while you're teaching them, and then it takes about 3 months to finish one integration. That's happening today. It also involved the excellent customer experiences that technology can provide. So a very good customer-facing portal that can really help your customer to really save their time and money with. I think there's one feature that we provide is that we send out the emails, notification, or alerts for your customers so that they know that they will have a potential demurrage or detention, even if we just provide port services, for example.
Right. I love that. I mean, I could have used that when I was in freight forwarding about 10 years ago. Not gonna lie. I think the amount of emails I sent out was just incredible.
Yes, that the ultimate goal is just to help the customers to minimize their cost and time.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think a number 3 problem is that it's a high risk industry where mistakes are costly.
Yes, they are.
So I know that ocean freight is probably only cost 2% of the cargo value, 2 to 5%. But if there's a mistake, you might have to pay for 100% of that cargo value. So I think this is like the real-time accurate notification information and alerts plays a role very effectively. So that how can you minimize the human errors? So when you can handle 300 shipments, 400 shipments a month, and you can have maybe just 30% of the human errors occurred, that's our ultimate goal. So that's happening in GoFreight's customers. So I actually measure that. So if you are using a spreadsheet to maintain to manage your shipments as an operator, you can only handle probably 100 shipments, door-to-door shipments a month. If you're using a TMS with like a spread, like paper folders, and to write down all the important timestamps to remind yourself, you can only probably handle 200 shipments. But with GoFreight, you can handle up to 400 shipments a month, and we save 34% per shipment, the fines on average. So that's our goal.
That's some big numbers. And, we were talking about it being manual. We've spoken about that a couple of times, but you're right. We haven't really mentioned the human error factor. Kanav, I see you sitting there like nodding your head with everything that Trenton is saying. What is the ROI on that human error factor, and obviously not using spreadsheets anymore?
It's leaps and bounds better because unfortunately humans aren't as reliable as a computer that's core function is just to execute on this one task again and again without getting tired. So if we build systems where we can remove as much, like Trenton said, as much of the human margin of error as possible, that means your operation is going to be that much more, again, efficient. So you have more output to give. So I think it's a huge ROI in that sense.
Well, and I'm also assuming here, but I'm guessing that you're probably seeing more innovative ideas, more creativity from your team now that they have, they're not doing those manual tasks as much, and they have a little bit more time to think about the functionality of their day-to-day and what they're doing on a day-to-day basis. Have some more time to even maybe talk to the customers.
Yeah, 100%. There's more time for customers. And then if a customer has a query that isn't, that that's that standard where we would need to think of a solution that is more tailored towards them. We have a lot more time for that as well, and that has allowed us to actually get into the other leagues of business. And yeah, that's the best way I could put it. It has freed up a lot of time and energy. It drastically has improved our performance in that regard.
Awesome. So can you talk to us through, or talk us through what a partnership with GoFreight looks like? Like, when you were thinking about working with GoFreight, what did those discussions look like? What questions were you asking? And then what did onboarding look like to get you to where you were at the point where you could fully use the system, and then obviously grow from there, because you grew 5 times within a year?
Yeah, so the partnership with GoFreight is very, very reliable. Their team, hats off, amazingly put together team. They help with any and every issue that I send their way. Usually when I reach out to other software companies and I need help, they'll take their own sweet time to reply, maybe days, maybe even a week. GoFreight replies the same day, and they help you get your issue sorted. In terms of scalability, as we touched on it earlier, because it's such an intuitive software, it's not that hard to get onboarded. And in that journey of getting onboarded, it was just one call, and we already knew the system inside out, and they gave you that personalized time and attention. And they even said, if you need more help, we'll be happy to help you. So like I said, very eager team and very helpful team that they've built over at GoFreight.
I like to hear that, because like we are all using different technology platforms for a variety of different things throughout our days, right? And I'm finding it more and more difficult to work with some of those technologies, because they, you have to go through a form or you have to like try to navigate to get to like a contact us form, and it can be very, very, very frustrating. So I think one of the key things that you just mentioned is, if you are going to work with a technology provider, you want to ask them, how easy is it to get in contact with you if I have a question or I have a concern?
Yeah, 100%. If you're, like I said, if a TMS is the backbone of your business, you need to be able to contact somebody from that team at a moment's notice to get problems ironed out, because if they don't, then that could be pretty significant financial implications.
Well, and downtime for you is, that just really can't happen.
Not at all.
Interesting. Okay. Well, thank you for sharing that. And I think also, how do you feel about working with GoFreight and it being a competitive advantage for you? Are you seeing that you are more competitive in the market with your clients?
100%. Yeah. Like I said earlier, most people don't even know that certain solutions exist. So when I tell them, hey, even if you ship 1 container a month, we have a portal that you can use to check on all your shipments at any given time. We have the automated notifications regarding your own cargo. If it's about to get demurrage or storage, you'll know it. We have the shipment reports that go up on whatever time sequence they want, whether it's daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly. So those are all very valuable things that customers, when they find out that is a possibility, they're like, of course, yes, we want this.
You just made me think about, and I keep going back to my days in freight forwarding, because all I keep thinking about is how hard my job was back then. And I remember having pieces of paper stuck out of my files and the writing in red, demurrage starts this date. You need to let somebody know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So from your time in the freight forwarding world,
all right,
I'm sure you can remember. No, what I mean is, when you were actively working on a shipment basis and you had the files stacked up on your desk, I'm sure you can remember pulling up to your desk in the morning and having to check every single file to make sure the ETA has been updated, is a shipment in storage and whatnot. What if somebody came to you at that time and told you, you don't have to do that anymore, it's all done automatically?
I'd be like, woohoo, I can leave at 5 o'clock.
Exactly. Yes. So you would have more time and energy for more important things. So that's kind of where we're at. It's a huge help.
I love that. I love that. All right. Let's talk about some advice. So, Daniel, I'm going to start with you. What's your advice or maybe your top tips for SMBs looking to harness technology for effective digital transformation? Are there key questions they should be asking? Are there things that they should be thinking about? Give us some insights.
Start. Begin.
Start today. Start
Start.
right now.
Start. I think that's don't sit back and think about what you've done in the past. Look forward and start and begin. Keep always in the back of your mind that people matter. Your employees and your customers, and look for solutions that fit both needs going forward. Look for solutions that enable automated workflow, as Kanav said. I think those are critical things. Insofar as, when you talk about your day, Sarah, I mean, think if you said you can go home at 5:00 and people can actually see you sitting at your desk behind, no
True.
more piles of paper.
I mean, if they want to.
If they, and I think choose wisely. I mean, I think test it, ask the right questions, figuring out what you need. Also, look at best practices. Don't be so stuck in the past that this is the way that we did it, because best practices are coming from lots of different places, and don't be afraid to ask those questions. Don't be afraid to question the way that you've done things in the past, and start to look for those solutions that are easy take up, easy to use, provide the data that you need, focus on your customer's customer, and also focus internally on your people and their productivity and their day.
Such great advice. I love that. Any more to add?
Well, I was going to add. Don't. I think that yes, look at the cost, but look at the ROI, as Kanav explained it, which is not just money; it's time, it's effort, it's customer satisfaction.
Yeah,
those are the true return on your investments.
Awesome. Kanav, do you have anything to add to that? What kind of advice would you give to somebody or an SMB?
I have a couple of things. In terms of what Daniel just said, the ROI aspect of it, this was a pretty unique perspective shift in my mind, and I feel when I communicate this to others, they kind of understand it too. Because we're in an industry where software was not even a consideration in terms of day-to-day operations, most people think it's just a needless added expense. The way I look at it is you're essentially paying for another employee. And if that employee is managing and making things 10 times easier for you, how valuable are they to you?
Right.
So that's one thing. The other thing is, again, it goes back into most people not being aware of certain solutions. Just keep an awareness of what different solutions there are. You don't have to research them hardcore. You don't have to, build your own thing. Just be aware of the market and see what different solutions are available. Eventually, what is right for you will stand out to you on its own, and you'll be able to utilize it. So be aware of that. And then the next thing is, if most people are just, getting aware of softwares like GoFreight, I can only imagine how much better their workflow would be when AI hits the scene in terms of logistics. So you need to be thinking that far out in order to take advantage of it properly when that time does come.
Absolutely. Now, I want each of you to get out your crystal ball. Kanav, what do you think 2024 is going to look like for the freight forwarding industry? Or what do you hope that it looks like?
I hope the freight rates climb up.
Okay.
That's what I hope, because they've been at the floor for a while now. So I hope that turns around a little bit. And other than that, yeah, just take it day by day and just do what we can do best.
Awesome. Daniel, what do you think?
I don't anticipate rates are going to climb much, Kanav, sorry to say.
No worries.
I think we're getting back to semi-normal, but normal, a different normal, because the supply chain has changed. We've learned a lot of lessons in the last 3 years, and so I think that volumes are going to start to return, but they're going to be different, and maybe even different peak seasons. I know we're starting to go into a peak season now, or started, 30 days ago. But I anticipate that there may be another, short one right before Lunar New Year, and then the traditional drop off. But I think that you'll start to see volumes kind of even out. And as you said, Sarah, in terms of people looking at SKUs, are they going to be buying as many as they bought before?
Right.
Maybe not. but the flow of those volumes are going to need to be consistent. And I think that's one of the things that technology brings to the table.
Yeah. Well, and customization too, right? We were talking
Yeah.
about customized technology solutions, but I think people are looking for customization in their products as well, which will also drive down some of those volumes too. All
Right.
right, Trenton, last but not least, final words. What is some of your advice on people looking for technology, and what do you see happening in the industry in 2024?
I will give a neutral answer, because I think I fell in love in this like freight forwarding industry for a long time, because I cannot stop thinking, if I were a freight forwarder, what would I do myself? So I would look for solutions that can, one, overall improve your service level and customer experiences without adding new employees. And number two is to add more value to your customers through different channels. You do have to be creative enough. And number three is to minimize human errors and fines. Number four is that software can generate reports or dashboards that could give you more insights to your business, including maybe customer performance, segmentation, profit margin analysis, things like that. And the last one is that be agile. I think the best way you can find the technology partner that can also be agile and improving ahead of time, and to be very responsive, because I think 2024 will be very different. That the customer expectation will still be high, and I think the macro economy won't be back to normal. I think this is a new norm, as Daniel mentioned. So be agile is so important, to be responsive to the macro situation, to your customers.
Amazing. Well, as the freight forwarding industry continues to grow its SMBs with their agile infrastructures and customer-centric business models that are most effectively meeting the needs of businesses, providing customized solutions to company-specific pain points. Their speed, efficiency, flexibility, and visibility are allowing them to harness a competitive advantage that is truly starting to level the playing field. And all of this is achieved with the right technology and the right partner, just like GoFreight. GoFreight empowers freight forwarders to improve productivity, profitability, and ultimately drive the growth of the entire industry so that everyone can succeed together. Visit gofreight.com to find out more about how they can help your business to grow. Thank you so much to Trenton, Kanav, and Daniel for joining me today, and for all of the incredible industry knowledge and expertise you've shared with us today. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you so much to everybody who have been watching and listening today as well. So Trenton, Kanav, Daniel, thank you so much for today.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, guys.
you.
Bye, everyone.